Hello again. So today's footage, we're going to be reviewing. We went to pick up some wood chips again, and for this time was for a friend. And then I've got to make a bunch of changes to the mirror ball tree and make sure that's all tested and functioning before I can tear it down and get things ready to work on the flooring again. Source of this is a trucking company that handles byproducts from the various mills in the area, and they go to the mill. They get loaded with a whole lot of wood chips and sawdust, and then they come back from the mills to their office here in Napavine and get weighed. And if the truck weighs too much, then they just come over to the back corner of their lot and dump until they're below weight, and they go weigh again and double check, and when they're below weight, then they head off to wherever it is that they're actually delivering the wood chips to. And since they're literally just scrap free stuff to them, they don't have any kind of cost associated on their part. They let anybody who wants it come and get some. So we have a ward member that happens to be one of their delivery drivers, and he was telling us about it when we mentioned that we needed some ground cover type materials. So we finally got around to checking it out, and I think this is the this is the third load of wood chips that we've gotten. And there's no real prediction as far as what variety they are, so if you're worried about color, then that may not be the best choice, but if you're just looking for wood chips, then it's a great way to do it. This particular day, as you can see, the clouds are quite active, and it was raining right up until we got the first few shovelfuls, and then it stopped raining quite literally until we gotten back in the truck. Like I was closing the door as I got in to drive away, and it started to rain again. So we had some pretty sweet timing there. But these are destined for a friend's house up in Bellevue. We've been helping them prepare their yard and their house that they're purchasing, and they wanted to get rid of a bunch of gravel from the backyard so that children don't have the opportunity to throw the gravel, and they needed something then to put down over the bare ground, so wood chips was the way to go. And with prices for materials such as that in the Bellevue area being what they are, we sent them a picture of the wood chips and said, hey, this is what we've been getting. If you want, the next time we come up, we could to help you out, we could bring the wood chips with us instead of trying to figure out how to get up there on a weekday to go pick some up when one of the landscaping places is open. And we figured out, if I remember right, to do one trailer full was going to cost them like $150, and it cost about $60 to pay for the fuel for us to drive up there, and then they, bought us food for the effort. So we went up, we took some, we came back down with some river rock that is now creating a nice pathway to get in and out of the camper. Or excuse me, not the camper, the spare room. So at this point, I need to get things cleared out so that I can get back to working on the floor. And we ended up picking up a tree because I lost I misplaced the tree top that I need to hold some of the lights, and we realized that the trees that are on the left, the one that's got the lights on them, is somewhat unique compared to the standalone light trees, and so we wanted to make sure that I had that available to hang curtains from, which meant we ended up finding the tree that I need actually in Seattle, actually at Tacoma, at a musician's friend. Sorry, Guitar Center. So we hurried over there and picked one up, and I'm getting everything swapped from the one tree to the other now, so that I can get all of the flooring cleared out. And that turned out to be a little bit more of a challenge than I would like, just because of the way that the lights are being positioned. These particular little lights they can only go flat. They can't look down at all from the base of the light. So that's one of the reasons why there's two that are facing up and two that are facing down, to be able to point them at the mirror ball. If they could have faced so that they actually go down and can point below the base, that would have been ideal, because then I would have just been able to set them up and have them like facing forward, essentially. And then just have them spin backwards to face the back of the deal and hit the mirror ball. But that's okay. It is what it is. So we'll get them swapped out. So for the most part, this was pretty easy, since I already had everything basically figured out. I did have to do just a little bit of work figuring out the positionings, and I ended up actually changing some of the positions a little bit. The biggest challenge that we ran into was relating to the transfer crates, I guess, is what you'd call them. I did not get any footage of that, but we've got some wood crates that stack on top of each other, and they have wheels on one of them and a lid for the other one. And the lid is sanded and painted and rounded, and actually has LEDs and button snaps, so I can put a skirt around it, and that way it doubles as a DJ table that can be backlit, as well as the transfer crate to haul the lighting. The old system was designed with the moving heads and two of the color rails, which worked really well, and it allowed them to be constantly secure and safe while moving, and at the same time easy to actually transport. The challenge that I ran into is that since the lights are on the ends of the bars, and since two of the bars are, half bars, the method we used to actually hold them in and lock them into place doesn't work. So we had to redesign that, and that took a little bit of finagling. I ended up having to redo all of the wiring a couple of times as a result. But we got it to work out. The one of the challenges with lighting like this is trying to keep the cable management sufficient so that it looks decent and you don't really notice that they're there. It's not a huge deal, but it is definitely noticeable and less professional when the cables are draping all over the place versus when you can get them all nice and clean. So one of the things I ended up doing was, instead of connecting the UV pars onto the actual bar with the bolts, was using some O clamps, which are actually really nice because they're easy to put on, they're quick, they're really secure, and they are adjustable, so you can actually loosen them and then spin them if you need to. This first setup can take a little bit. And as you saw there's our little follow me kitty. She's learned that I tend to make noise when I'm in here doing things. So if we sit down, then she'll come and join me. But if I'm doing stuff, then she tends to not want to hang out. And this is kind of an interesting display that I had talked about in a previous video, I think, where you can see that they're sort of doing the same. Well, not sort of. They're doing the same thing, but they sort of do, like, the way that the lights are positioned upside down for two of them. It's kind of cool because it creates a little bit of a backwards effect. And this is basically just a pre-programmed sound active setup. So if I make a sound, then it, like if I tap one of the pipes or whatever, then they react to that and change color and direction and whatever. But then if there's no sound, then they just kind of start doing their own thing. And I was kind of surprised that they actually, like, I don't know if it's just that they all started at the same time and therefore are all at the same step in their programming, or if, once I actually got them all plugged in and connected with DMX, one of them became automatically a master light and the other three became slave lights, which I was really surprised about. I figured that you'd have to change that, but that was a little bit of a pleasant surprise. And so at the moment, I'm pretty much just wasting my time. My goal here was to use zip ties for any cable that is going to stay there and not be disconnected, and then use Velcro ties for any cable that needs to be unplugged to be able to take the tree down. And that was a great idea, except, like I said, I ended up having to change position of the lights. Like the two lights on the top, I ended up putting on O-rings or O-clamps and actually bringing them in. And here I'm actually playing some music and was just testing that because I was surprised that it was actually a sound reactive setup without changing any DMX settings. And then as soon as they receive a DMX signal, they just stop whatever they're doing and start following the DMX signal. So I guess that's kind of a cool programming feature, in that if they ever lose the DMX signal, they're not going to just shut off. They'll start to just kind of do their own thing, which sort of looks like it's a programmed effect. But now that everything's there, so I received the last of the cable connectors, and I'm just going to hurry and put those in place. And since there's no sound, if I remember correctly, you'll see here in a minute that the boss, the queen, decides that she wanted to come interrupt me. And you can, oh yep, see, there she is. And she was perfectly content to just block whatever she thought I was going to be working on and ensure that I was giving her as much attention as anything else, or more so. I thought I got her to come and lay down for a minute, and then as soon as I stopped, she just jumped back up on the table, because that's where my attention was. This is her way of telling me that it is time to brush her and feed her and give her treats. It does make things somewhat difficult to function. Then I wanted to, since this setup is something that my daughter had said she would be interested in and wants to have, I figured I would go ahead and show her what it's like. And again, this is still just kind of they're doing their own thing. So it's nice to know that they will that they'll be sufficient for if the signal is ever lost, particularly since I'm using, you can see on the desk there, basically right in front of me on the far side of the desk, there's a little box with some adapters, battery powered adapters. I'm not really a fan of wireless stuff because there's just a lot that can go wrong, but it is kind of the way to go in a lot of ways, because having to coil cables, like the teardown of the lighting for the old system that I had took a long time because there were just a lot of cables and you have to deal with them. And so here, if you watch real quick, it'll change. As soon as I plug that DMX cable in, it realizes that there's something there. And I positioned the camera here because I sort of wanted to show a little bit more detail about what I was trying to do the other night, because I have to repeat everything. So I've got the program set up and I've got all of the different buttons to control everything, and so now I'm looking at the 3D view and double checking to make sure that all of the signals are correct. So one of the easiest ways to do this is to assign each light a different color, and then you can see here that in the 3D view they're pointing out to the sides, but in real life they're pointing up at me and they're not doing the same I mean, they're doing the same thing, but they look totally different because the orientation in the 3D view is wrong. So I have to sit and figure out what that orientation should be to get them to match. And the reason that you would want that is because if you don't have the ability to see what's going on, then you kind of have to know and basically guess what the light would actually be doing. Now if you look in the lower left corner, you see how some of, like 2 of the 4 LEDs is turning on and off. I discovered that a couple of my programs somehow were missing a little bit of a step, so I went through to figure out which ones they were so I'd know to go back through and save that and fix it later. But so now I've got the mirror ball position sort of figured out, and you can see, you know, here they're doing a program that I've already pre-programmed, and I can change the speed and, you know, speed it up and slow it down, and then they point at the mirror ball when I need to. So we'll call that good for today. Thank you as always for watching. Stay safe, and God bless you and yours.